did a lot of ChatGPT and Grok research into this. Oh, this.
So it's just that I think that Bitcoin is the favorite, and now it's got such a momentum going with trillions of dollars.
Well, yeah, I guess I could look at it the same way. When we look at metals, we look at platinum, copper, and gold.
Yeah.
We don't look at things like uranium.
Right.
Nobody holds, well, some people do, but nobody holds uranium as a store of wealth, right? Not common.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Although it may be a better store of wealth.
Correct. Yeah. Probably worth more per ounce than gold is. So.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's ultimately whatever is most popular.
Just trying to understand it. It's something that's. I'm looking at this is a genie that's been let out of the bottle, whether I like it or I don't. So you better figure out how to deal with it. I've been talking.
I agree. I'm the same
My
way.
partner, I keep talking to my partner about adoption of AI and utilizing AI in business. And he's younger than me. Right? He's a millennial. And he's like, yeah, this is useless. This is argument.
Yeah, right. Wednesday morning.
Yeah, and I
said good morning to Derek, and he said, well, I'm not
1980s
used to
when
that.
I was in college. The internet, people said the same things about.
The first few years, yeah.
What's in that bag over there?
Yeah, I've jumped in with both feet with
I
this.
remember being in my college computer classes and getting, this was when the internet was barely a skeleton. And you had to use specialized software to access data on computers in different areas of the world.
I think if you get ahead of the
It was
curve,
cumbersome. And,
Yeah.
and then along comes the web browser and the World Wide Web, which made this simple and easy.
yep. I think if you get ahead of the curve in your line of work with the AI stuff, you'll get to the point where no competitor will catch you.
Well, you know that our competitors will do it, so we need to do it.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. If we could have a moment of silence and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if we could have the roll call, please.
Mr. Jamie Girardi,
Here.
Mr. Christopher Poole, Mr. John Moody,
Here.
Mr. Matthew Monks,
Here.
Mr. Derek Potlitz,
Here.
Mr. Chris Williams,
Here.
Chairman Charles Gray.
Here. Okay, and the proof of publication?
There is no proof of publication.
No publication for this meeting? No requirement? Okay. All right, now we can begin. You got the floor, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning on this fine Wednesday morning, where we're meeting as the Local Planning Agency Comprehensive Plan Update Session. Today we'll be focusing on the Pasco 2050 chapter, Pasco Adapts first, and later this afternoon another chapter will be discussed. Pasco Adapts, this chapter, like all the chapters of the comprehensive plan, have been worked on by numerous industry-related stakeholders, the county attorney's office and county departments, including in this case by the Parks, Recreation, Natural Resources Department, the Office of Strategic Sustainability. That's still a new department, so strategy and sustainability. I apologize to the department. It's a new name and I have to get used to it. Which were significant participants and contributors in the development of this chapter. In addition to this, the Planning, Development, Economic Growth Department facilitated the reviews for these departments and various industry-related stakeholders in order to capture their input and facilitate that development of the draft. Moreover, it bears noting that we received significant community stakeholder feedback on the question of natural resource and conservation needs within what is the coastal element, Pasco adapts, within the county through thousands of public comments, surveys via the Pasco 2050 project website, as well as over 10 community workshops and open houses across the county over the last 2 years. We're presenting today Pasco Adapts, though our plan, like before, is not to go line by line through the chapter, but to present the big ideas for the chapter and provide you all with an overview of new policies that were added to the proposed comprehensive plan update. Additionally, we have the usual staff and team with us today. Hyatt Mazzilli, the senior planner with Planning Services, who's the project manager for the comprehensive plan update. She'll provide the presentation and walk us through the chapter overview. You have with you in your materials the draft chapter, the red line version of it, the policy change tables that illustrate the various edits that were made in Pasco 2050 as compared against the current comprehensive plan, and the data and analysis information that supports the goals, objectives, and policies of the proposed chapter. If there are any questions or comments, we will be available for further discussion, as well as our counterparts in the Parks, Recreation, Natural Resources Department and the OSS. And with that, I will hand the baton over to Hyatt, and she can make the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning, Planning Commissioners. Hyatt Mazzilli, Planning, Development, and Economic Growth. Okay, so Pasco 2050 Comprehensive Plan Update comes together in 11 chapters, each a building block stacking up to guide our county's future growth and development. On this slide, you can see them all at a glance. This morning, like Terry mentioned, we will dive into Pasco Adapts. So following the same approach as with the previously reviewed chapters, I will begin with an overview of the proposed amendments to Pasco Adapts, and then I will turn it over to you for discussion. Joining us today to assist with answering your questions are staff from the Natural Resources Department, staff from the Emergency Management Services Department, and also staff from the Office of Strategy and Sustainability. Thank you for joining us. I know Terry has mentioned this already, but I also want to reiterate that this chapter has been reviewed by not only these subject matter departments, but also by other stakeholders, including Mr. Moody. And their revisions, or there have been revisions based on the feedback that we received. Okay, let's ride the current into the next slide and take a closer look at Pasco Adapts. So Pasco Adapts is the new name for the existing coastal and floodplain management element. This chapter is required under Chapter 163 of the Florida statutes, and it provides a strategic framework for the responsible use and management of our coastal resources by guiding development activities, protecting human life, controlling public spending in disaster-prone areas, and protecting wildlife and natural habitat. Pasco Adapts is organized around 3 major goals, one of which is brand new. The first goal focuses on protecting and enhancing natural, archaeological, and cultural and historic resources. The second goal is about protecting people and property from coastal hazards. And the third goal, which is the brand new goal, promotes resilience and sustainability in Pasco County. Each goal is supported by specific objectives and policies. In total, the chapter includes 9 objectives, 4 of which are new, and 81 policies, 33 of them are new. While all these policies pertain to coastal areas, several of them also apply to the countywide. So changes to this chapter include consolidation and rewriting of policies to improve clarity and to address the statutory requirements. The most significant update is the addition of goal number 3, which is focused, like I said, on promoting resilience and sustainability, and which also incorporates recommendations from 2 recent planning efforts: the Resilience and Sustainability Action Plan, which was approved by the board in May of 2025, and the Living Shoreline Plan, which was completed in 2024. As a note, staff met one-on-one with each planning commissioner in December and July to discuss the sustainability and the resilience and sustainability action plan and how this plan will be incorporated into the comprehensive plan. It is also important to note that this chapter ties in with other chapters of the comprehensive plan, including Pasco Grows, Pasco Conserves, Pasco Serves, and Pasco Invests. And we did that to ensure that we have a holistic and coordinated approach to coastal and environmental planning. Okay, next slide highlights the new goal and also the objectives and policies we're proposing in the Pasco Adapts chapter. Objective Adapts 1.1, protection of natural resources, is not entirely new. It consolidates 5 existing objectives related to natural resources into one single cohesive objective. We added 2 new policies under this objective: Policy Adapts 1.1.4, Nature Coast Aquatic Preserve, and Policy Adapts 1.1.13, Discourage Shoreline Uses. Objective Adapts 2.1, Hurricane Evacuation, is also not entirely new. It simply consolidates policies related to hurricane preparedness, mitigation, and evacuation, and their one goal, again, for clarity. The new policy under this objective is Policy Adapt 2.2.9, Enhancing Flood Resilience through the Community Rating System, CRS, was crafted from existing language in Policy Adapt 2.2.8, so it's not brand new. And the intent of this policy is to clarify aspects of the Community Rating System program. And as I discussed in the previous slide, Goal Adapts 3 is the new goal that seeks to promote resilience and sustainability in our county. And there are about 30 policies under this goal. All in all, these policies ensure that ADAPTs reflect both recent planning insights and community priorities. And speaking of community priorities, this slide shows how the goals, objectives, and policies of Pasco ADAPTs directly reflect the community's vision, especially around the theme Resilient Pasco. The community was very vocal about wanting our county to be more resilient and better prepared for natural disasters. For example, they emphasized limiting large, intense development in low-lying coastal areas, which is addressed through Policy 1.1.16 and 1.1.17. They also encouraged us to step up the education and outreach on natural hazard and resilience, leading policies like 3.1.12 and 3.1.13. I just wanted you to use these because it's so cool to use them. Overall, we are carrying forward the community's priorities into actionable policies that will guide the growth while making our county more resilient and better prepared for future natural hazards. And this concludes my overview of the Pasco ADAPTs. Let's get this party started.
Okay, roll.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Hyatt,
You have questions for Hyatt?
Yeah, I think we're just in discussion now.
I guess the question would be, would it be too much to ask? You had 33 new policies and some new objectives to actually go through those particular
Sure.
objectives and policies.
It will not be too much to ask, not at all. Okay. So do you want to start with goal 3, which is the big goal with all the policies? You want to start
You
with
had like a bullet point list of your new,
Couple slides back.
right?
the slide number?
Yep.
Oops, sorry. Okay, do you have a specific question, Mr. Moody, about a specific policy, or you want me to?
If you could give kind of an
Quick overview.
overview of each of those things, and then was there anything in particular that staff found important to amend or change from the prior comprehensive plan?
So a lot of these policies, almost 29 of them, came from language in the Resilience and Sustainability Action Plan. What we did, we took those action items in the Resilience and Sustainability Action Plan and turned them into policies under this objective. So the sustainability and the resilience, the RSAP, I'm just going to keep calling it RSAP because it's a long name. The RSAP has a lot of regulatory language. So in this goal, we made sure that the language is not too regulatory, and we are more encouraging and promoting these initiatives and these strategies rather than actually requiring them to happen. So that's, from the last conversations we've had with our stakeholders, that was the feedback, is to not make it too regulatory. So there's a lot of promoting and a lot of providing guidance into ensuring that these policies or these strategies will happen. The 3.1.13, for example, post-disaster redevelopment plan, that's not a new policy. The language might be new, but we included it under this goal because the intent of the post-disaster redevelopment plan is to reduce and eliminate the impacts of natural hazards that can be a threat to our county. So it made sense for it to be in this goal.
I want to talk for a minute about 1.1.12
Okay.
and moreover 1.1.13. So Pasco County shall discourage shoreline uses that are vulnerable to coastal hazards or contribute to environmental degradation, such as critical public facilities and hazardous material storage.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why we would want to do such a thing. And I know that when we're thinking about, for instance, I was very active in the flood damage prevention ordinance. We talked about things like storage tanks at marinas and the like. But one of the concerns I have over this particular policy, maybe the county attorney can help me with this, is I'm looking forward into the future with the advent of AI.
Mm-hmm.
And although I will tell you that I don't like that, but I think that genie's been let out of the bottle. One of the things that comes along with AI is data centers that require a massive amount of power.
Mm-hmm.
And I foresee over the next 25 years, Pasco County's power generation needs becoming critical as we have to power these data centers to run the AI. They are also, power plants require a massive amount of cooling water,
Mm-hmm.
and so do data centers. And I could foresee that because of the data centers' need to seek a water resource for the purpose of cooling, and power companies need to generate the power to supply these things, I want to make sure that we have policies that are going to allow us to seize upon that opportunity and not leave ourselves out of
He's talking about 1.1.
the AI boom that is to come.
It's actually in the.
So, for instance,
sustainability or resilience section.
1.1.3, we're going to discourage shoreline uses that are vulnerable to coastal high hazards or contribute to environmental degradation. What I want to make sure is that we're
Unless
not
we
making
removed
it
it.
difficult for Duke Energy or whomever to come along and build another power plant along the shoreline, because that's where it probably needs to be sited in order to provide the necessary cooling water. And I don't particularly like it, but our president is kind of opening the door that we're going to
Maybe we
have
moved
a
it back.
nuclear renaissance in this country, and we may find ourselves where we have a shoreline where somebody wants to build a nuclear power plant.
So you're talking about the power generation itself, not the data center, because usually data centers will not locate in these areas.
I would agree with you. Yes, I'm talking more about the power generation, but I do recognize that the data centers themselves do require a massive amount of water for the purposes of cooling.
2, 3.
And
It's usually
they
a
may
closed
need-
system
They
that
may
is
need to get
recirculated.
that from the
Right,
coast.
but typically a data center wouldn't locate more inland because they don't want to risk
Yeah, I don't,
data centers being.
right, but the power plant itself may,
I think I got the
I,
answer.
I think we've seen, if we look up and down the coastline of Florida, whether I like it or I don't, that's the place where power plants locate. We don't have like a St. John's River where they could locate on the
I'm
banks.
still lost as to which policy you think would prevent that. Like,
One, well, it doesn't, it's discouraged, 1.1.3.
1.3,
One-
13?
Yeah, 13.
oh, that's where it's 1.113? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, I think the next policy says that we're going to prioritize water-related uses such as certain utilities, which I would think.
Well, that's crossed off.
Well, if I can offer a thought here.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
The policy is discouraging vulnerable facilities, essentially, or shoreline uses, I should say. Discouraging vulnerable shoreline uses. It doesn't discourage hardened or non-vulnerable shoreline uses. And one of the sidebar discussions I was having just now with Hyatt, you sort of have to maybe link or couple policy adapts 233, which talks about the evaluation of critical facilities. Pasco County shall continue to conduct vulnerable assessment studies to evaluate all critical facilities to determine their vulnerability to hazards. And the whole point of a vulnerability assessment is to figure out what do we need to do to harden the facilities or the assets or the uses to make sure that they're not vulnerable to whatever coastline challenges we may be facing, hurricanes, et cetera. So that'd be just a thought that I would suggest here for the discussion.
That would apply to like a desalination plant too, I think, too, because they would want to be in those locations.
Yeah, it's not
They're all things that could happen, right?
Right. Mhm.
it's not necessarily a ban on uses. It's just we don't want vulnerable uses on the
No,
coast.
but I think what I'm trying to get at is I want to
I
make,
understand Mr. Moody's point. So, the way I read this, Terry, I'm not sure it's saying what you're saying verbally, because it sort of says such as critical public facilities. And so, almost implying that if it's a critical public facility, it is vulnerable.
yes.
In other words,
Right.
It doesn't say such as vulnerable critical public facilities. It's, the way it's worded, arguably a critical public facility is vulnerable and contributes to environmental degradation. When you use such as, you're saying, for example,
Right.
so the way I read that is, we're gonna discourage uses that are vulnerable to coastal hazards and contribute to environmental, and one example of those things is a critical public facility.
Which is not what you meant, I don't think.
No, it's not the
It's
intent.
different than what you're
Yeah.
telling us verbally.
Right.
I mean, I can understand not wanting to locate a wastewater treatment plant right on the coast or something
Right.
like that. So, but there's one caveat to a critical public infrastructure facility
I mean,
that should be on the coast, and that
so,
would be a power
I guess
plant.
the question is, could you just put a period after degradation and stop the sentence? That probably would be consistent with what you're saying verbally, because you're just saying that you don't want vulnerable.
Or you could say certain critical public facilities.
Well, so David, could we change something like, or that mitigates its environmental degradation? I could foresee an argument in the future where, let's say we want to have a nuclear power
Mitigate,
plant
yes.
along the coastline, like they have up in Citrus
That's what it
County.
means to not contribute.
Um,
It's to mitigate.
there will be lots of people that will come here and tell you that that contributes to environmental degradation. I'm sure we could debate that all day long.
Well, I mean, you could probably just put a period after that are vulnerable to coastal hazards and just say period. I don't know,
And not give examples?
well, I'm not sure what you're trying to achieve with the rest of the sentence. Because I understand what you're saying, you want to discourage uses that are vulnerable to coastal hazards. I understand.
Or damage the
In staff's
environment, I guess,
defense, because I did a lot of work with staff on 1104 and the flood damage prevention, I think staff is following what's going on in 1104. In 1104, in the Land Development Code, we have a whole discussion about critical facilities. And so I see where they're getting this, but what I'm suggesting is that when we're talking about, as Mr. Pontlett said, locating a wastewater treatment plant on the coastline, yes, that's something that's vulnerable and definitely, if flooded by a hurricane, could contribute to environmental degradation. But I think there's other uses that go on the coastline, like I said, the power plant is the example, that we need to make sure that we're not creating a unnecessary barrier. Not saying these things shouldn't be looked at and studied when someone comes to propose one, but we don't want to make it impossible for somebody to do it. Maybe we don't have an answer for all that today, but
Yeah.
I guess my carbon would contribute to environmental degradation is somewhat following up to what you're saying is, you could argue that any use contributes. I mean, it contributes a very, if I put 0.1
Right.
millimeter of something in, that I've contributed to environmental degradation. So I think what staff's probably really trying to say is that, I think, that if the use is vulnerable to a hazard, and that hazard hits that use, it's going to contribute to degradation of the environment.
Exactly.
I don't think, but that's not what it says. So if it says something like Pasco County shall discourage uses that are vulnerable to coastal hazard, and that where such hazard could contribute to environmental degradation or something to that effect, I'm not coming up with the wording very well in my head right now, but
Yeah.
I don't think that the mere fact that it's adding 0.1 millimeter or something to the environment would be enough to say that it should be discouraged. I think what you're really trying to say is that if the hurricane hit it,
Yeah,
it would,
the hazard would cause
hazard would
the
cause
contribution.
environmental degradation.
Yeah.
I think,
We can wordsmith it and get to that meaning. So that
and
it,
I definitely don't think you should be just assuming that any piece of critical public facility meets that test. So you shouldn't, I don't think you need,
I don't think we need this.
I think you could just put a period after it and not say such as critical public facilities and hazardous material storage.
Yeah.
I guess hazardous material storage may be one of those that you probably never would want. I mean, I guess I don't
Well,
know, that's hard for.
so if I'm the nuclear power plant, I gotta have that uranium over there to power that thing.
But there's the Power Plant Siting Act that would govern.
Well,
There's a lot of federal
but
regulations.
to your point, then why do you need it in the comp plan? I mean,
Yeah, federal and state regulations that would govern a power plant, especially nuclear power
I think they could
plants.
just say something, Pasco County should discourage shoreline uses that are vulnerable to coastal hazards where hazards could where such hazards could contribute to environmental degradation or something to that effect.
Well, an example, a non-power plant example would be the Coast Guard wants to set up a station along the Pasco County coast to better patrol the coast, purposes of public safety. Maybe the Marine Patrol does. They want to have dockage facilities. They clearly need fuel for their boats and helicopters, and I just want to make sure that good things like that can happen. I get
we're on the right track.
There's different examples, as Derek pointed out. A wastewater treatment plant is clearly something we probably don't want on the coast. But there are
I
others
mean,
that we
if
may.
it said they're vulnerable to coastal hazards, where such hazards would cause increased environmental degradation, I think what staff is trying to say is that the difference with the Coast Guard is, I would argue, they're not vulnerable to, I mean, they're set up to handle coastal hazards, in theory.
In theory, yes. Yeah, I think they are. The question is, like, so for instance, they have a fuel storage facility on their base.
So they said, instead of saying discourage, we can say shall be
Well,
I think staff gets the point. Maybe you could just allow them to wordsmith.
Yeah, I understand they may not be able to solve this right now. I'm just,
You understand the
I think
concern,
it's a policy matter, it's fine.
right, and Jerry?
Because in the discouragement, you'd have to evaluate. I'm sorry?
I don't want to have to try to redraft this here on the.
Yeah, I think we've
got
got,
it.
we
Understand the concern.
we'll wordsmith it and yes,
yeah,
Okay.
fair enough.
we'll adjust it.
I think mainly they just have to be hardened to
Correct,
prevent contamination if there is a natural disaster.
correct.
So I do have one more question about it. I'll let Mr. Reed finish. I don't know if he's done.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, there's a couple places I saw in these policies where it refers to the compliance with the hurricane mitigation fee ordinance.
All right, can you put up that
And
list
I'm
we
trying-
had
yeah,
up
so an
again?
example is,
That list we had, can you put that up again?
2.1, policy 2.1.9?
well, 2.1.7 mentions it,
Yeah.
2.1.9
and my question really, well, 2.1.10 also mentions it. The question I have for you is, I assume that means, that's a very specific name, so I assume by that you're referring to 1302.7. My question is, why are we not recognizing section 1103 of the code? Because it makes it sound like all we care about is money, all right, and my understanding when we did the hurricane mitigation ordinances, it wasn't just a money issue. The 1103 talks about public information programs, evacuation plans. These aren't just the payment of money, these are more about how you educate the public on what happens during a hurricane. And so I'm not understanding why we only are talking about the fee ordinance and not the section of our code that talks about requirements for information programs, evacuation plans, things like that. Like, my concern is it makes it sound like pay a fee and you're done. Like, that's all we care about is giving us some money and you're perfectly okay.
Yeah, I'm just running through the language really quick just to get your point.
And David, can I back up a minute and talk about 2.1.9?
Well,
Because
I can, but I want to give an answer to my question.
Sure, go ahead. It all ties in.
I don't think it, I don't think it's the intention of the language to ignore Land Development Code Section 1103 and the intent of 1103. I think the language is assuming or perhaps presuming that that's already taking place. But to the extent that we want to be clearer, more deliberate,
Well, look, I don't have a problem if you don't want to call it any ordinance, okay? But
yeah.
my concern is you called out one particular ordinance and then didn't call out the other one.
Yeah,
So, to me, if you're going to call out one, you should be calling out both.
okay.
Okay.
Or neither. I just don't do it halfway.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sorry, John.
No, that's okay. So I've received a lot of discussion, grumbling from the land use community regarding 2.1.9. And the opinion expressed is that, and this goes to the last sentence of that policy, David, where it says, shall include at a minimum an analysis of the impacts of proposed amendment or development on the Category 5 hurricane evacuation level of service. The position that's been expressed to me is that the board has already set policy and that the mitigation is payment of the hurricane shelter impact fee, and that's already been, that this policy is duplication in that it's already been enacted through the land development code.
Well, by the way, it's not just the fee, it's also compliance with 1103, but.
Okay,
I-
yes, but
I mean,
they're,
I've
to
read
their,
the- I've read, I know what you're talking about, and I've read the conditions of projects that have been approved in this area, and they all say you gotta pay the fee and comply with law. I mean, they're not, no limit to just paying the fee.
I agree. The
But-
point they're trying to make is that this policy, they fear that this policy creates something new when they feel that the policy's already been implemented through the adoption of 1103 and the hurricane
Well, first of
shelter
all, it
fee.
looks like it's an existing policy.
Correct. And that's what they're saying is that's already been implemented and should come out.
So this is one where I don't know whether it's required by state law.
Yeah,
I don't know if this is Morgan-
So what is this
Elizabeth's not here, but
It's on the last sentence of
I have some vague recollection that
2.1.9.
this had some state law basis, but again, I don't know if that state law still exists.
I think what their concern is that they feel, and we're here having a discussion about it, I'm not taking a position yet. They're of the mind that this has already been implemented through the land development code, and I think the fear is that this implies that some additional analysis of the proposed impacts can be required upon them based upon this policy. They feel like it's already implemented, adopted, this issue's resolved, and they don't want this to be an open-ended question.
So that may be in fact how we're implementing. What I don't know though is whether, you know, probably need either a consultant or Morgan or somebody, because I've not researched this issue recently,
Okay.
whether this statute, there's a statute referenced in it, 3178 ADA. I don't know if it requires us to do this for a plan amendment. With increasing density in the coastal hazard area.
Right, I think that's the, you hit the nail on the head, that's the concern.
First of all, I agree with you, it does require a heightened level analysis for a plan amendment in the coastal area, there's no question. Do you want to add something?
So, yeah, go ahead.
So, good morning, folks. Andy Foss, I'm the Emergency Management Director for Pasco County. So the timing survey or the Category 5 evacuation level of service is determined by the LEPC and the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. So we take these as gospel, and I know we have them posted in here as a 2021 statistics, and we have not got the newest one. But I think it's prudent that this stays in here because that sets our level for the citizens of Pasco County. That lets them know how long it's gonna take for them to get out of the county. If,
He's talking about a different policy though, you're talking about, there's a different policy.
211 and 212.
That actually sets our level of service.
Yeah.
So he's not questioning the setting of the level of service, at least he's not right now.
okay.
No, I'm not.
He's not questioning
I did have questions about that, though.
the level of service for evacuation. Although I do wonder why we're not just referring to whatever the latest standard is as opposed to putting it specifically in the comp plan. But putting that aside, he's not questioning that. He's questioning the need to require an amendment to the comp plan that's increasing density to demonstrate compliance with that level of service.
Yes.
Is Morgan researching?
It's not the level of service itself that he's questioning. And I have a vague recollection that this was put into the comp plan, comply with some state law, but it's been a long time.
I guess they
looked at it.
backed up
So
and said
I don't
this
know
sentence
whether
is being-
staff or Morgan or.
Right, and it may be, I think that fear can be assuaged by saying something to the effect that this policy has been implemented by the enactment of land development code sections. What they're afraid of is that there's some new or additional requirement beyond following 1103 and payment of the fee.
Well, I guess this is also a question for Terry and Amy, because I mean, I don't know, because they review, this is only for plan amendments, we're not talking about
Yes,
rezoning.
correct.
So, have we had any plan amendments recently in the coastal high hazard area where, and then, have we in fact required this analysis to be done? Or is Mr. Moody correct that we just basically cover it by saying you pay the fee and comply with 1103 and therefore you've sort of been deemed to have met this evacuation level of service?
Okay. I'll let Morgan. Go ahead.
Hello. Morgan Dean, County Attorney's Office. So 8A just says that a proposed comprehensive plan amendment will be found in compliance with the state coastal high hazard provision if, and there are three things, the one being that the adopted level of service is maintained for a Category 5 storm event, or a 12-hour evacuation time to shelter is maintained for a Category 5 storm event, and shelter space reasonably expected to accommodate the residents or development contemplated by a proposed comprehensive plan amendment is available, or the third is appropriate mitigation is provided that will satisfy subparagraph 1 or 2, and that can include payment of money, contribution of land.
If we're correct, then, so maybe we should rephrase this to say that increases in density in the coastal hazard will demonstrate compliance with that statute.
Okay.
Because that's, what this comp plan policy requires is probably a higher standard than what the statute is requiring. Which would address Mr. Moody's concern, because mitigation is one of the options.
Okay, we can make that change.
Okay, thank you.
Now, can we go back to the other question about, going back to level of service? Well, I don't disagree with our emergency management director that is the current evacuation time. We don't always update our comp plan as frequently as we would like. I guess my question is, rather than codify the current evacuation time in the comp plan, is there some, we say the latest one established by some entity so that we're not having to, every time they update it, we're not having to change our comp plan?
Yeah, I think it's in 211.
Right, he cited that they follow the TVRPC.
Yeah, I mean, why, is there a reason why we can't just say the latest evacuation times established by TVRPC?
Can we clarify just the policies you're referencing?
It's in 2.1.1 and
2.1.2.
2.1.2.
That was my question, because there's two different times there. Is 211 like the goal of 38 hours and the actual time right now is 42 and a half?
No, so the two different times, one is in-county evacuation, is moving people within the county. The out-of-county is actually getting people from Pasco County into other jurisdictions.
So there's three times, because it says 38 hours for in-county, 38 hours for out-of-county. But then in 212, it says 42.5 hours is determined by the TBRs.
Yeah, by the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. That's their average time that they think it would take Pasco County to evacuate if we had to evacuate.
Okay, so the 211 is the goal then?
Yes,
We want to get to 38 hours for in and out of county?
yes, sir.
Okay. So you may want to look at some language just to kind of clarify that that's what that is.
Okay,
Because that was my inference, that it looks like you were setting a goal in 211 and then saying we're currently at in 212. So you may want to clarify that that's just, our goal is to be at 38 hours.
Okay.
So, question,
sir.
how do you, so if we're establishing that the level of service is 38 hours for in-county and 38 hours for out-of-county,
Establishing that
how
goal.
do we achieve that goal? What is it that the county needs to do to fix that? If it's currently 42 and a half hours, how do we get it to 38 hours?
It's all based on road structures. It's based on getting directional flow of traffic, highways, interstates, and getting the flow of traffic, and we actually call reverse flow.
Okay, so is that something that the county controls, or is that something that the governor and the FHP have to control? How does that work?
So it's a two-prong approach. If it's in county and it's a county-maintained road, it's the sheriff's office and FHP. If it's a state road, it's DOT and FHP.
Well, I would also add that part of our hurricane mitigation fee, it's a small part, goes to ITS enhancements, which is trying to have smart signals that can adjust to hurricane evacuation.
It does address it in 215 and 216 a little bit.
So it's not entirely state controlled. I mean, some of it is us, like the improvements we make to signal timing and roadways, like there's things we can do locally to enhance those times.
And another really big thing that impacts us with these times is Pinellas and Hillsborough County. Pinellas and Hillsborough evacuate north, so it impacts us. So it's a big timing piece between when I pull the trigger for an evacuation, Pinellas pulls, and then Hillsborough.
So the follow-up question is there policies you think are appropriate to be in here to achieve that objective, if there's not a policy in here already that you think does it?
I would have to sit down with my team and brainstorm that and draft one up. It would be
Well,
prudent to
I
have
mean,
one in there.
If you read 2.1, it lists all the strategies that we're talking about.
Yeah, 215, saying it shall continue to develop and maintain adequate vehicle capacity on all identified evacuation routes. And then 216, critical evacuation routes, capital improvements Pasco County shall prioritize capital improvements for critical evacuation routes with insufficient capacity through interdepartmental coordination. And shall coordinate with Florida DOT.
I kind of read it that all the strategies are already in here.
One thing to add to the conversation, we're checking on the side, state statutes don't direct county governments or jurisdictions to actually include the hours in the comprehensive plan. It does say that you have to address it in the comprehensive plan. It doesn't say you have to be that specific. However, to Mr. Foss's point, all of the neighboring counties in their comprehensive plans are referencing certain numbers. And so if you want coordination, accurate coordination anyway, my thought would be to continue with what the whole region is doing and keep the hours in the comprehensive plan. It's standard practice
Well,
with the other jurisdictions.
okay, I mean, I guess, but like 2.1.2, obviously it changed from 2020 because it got reduced from 55 to 42.5 in a 5-year period. So it just seems like it's a moving target. And so why?
I think the language needs to be clear, because I think they're using that as an example of where we're at, but we want to get to 38. So they probably
I guess my
should clarify
question
that.
is why couldn't it just say Pasco County should work toward reducing out-of-county hurricane operational evacuation clearance times as determined in the Tampa Bay Region Hurricane Evacuation Study?
Right.
or the latest Tampa Bay
To
region.
David's point is this, the target may change over time. We may decide, okay, we got to 38, now let's get to 30.
Right.
I would prefer to leave the numbers in there. It's a goal, number one, being set, and number two, this is a public document. The people need to see how long it's gonna take them to get out. I mean, we could broadcast it all day. You hear me on the podium during storms.
So my question to you, Mr. Foster, is then who's going to update this policy every year?
So I think the time frame that you can see in the draft here is about a 5-year time frame. That's within the range of the typical EAR, the evaluation, the annual evaluation process that the state has us go through, the evaluation appraisal.
I think you can probably leave the
Report.
times
Thank
if you're
you.
just a little bit more clear about it. You know, you need to specify that 38 hours is
Or-
the
or-
current goal, and then the 42.5 hours
Or
is the
as may
current.
be adopted by, you know, we do the same thing with amendments to flood maps. In fact, that was one of the things I wanted to point out in this section. You know, it's the most recent flood map as may be amended by FEMA. So the same thing, I think to David's point, you're covered by including that language as may be adopted by the TVRPC.
Or what if it said the latest, based on the latest study, which as of 2025 is 42 point?
That's what I was going to
Right,
suggest.
yeah,
That's a way of leaving the number in there without date.
That way the number's published, but it moves as the study's updated.
Right. That's what I was going to suggest.
That's fine.
Okay. So it would say, as determined by the latest Tampa Bay Region Hurricane Evacuation Study, which for 2025 is 42.5 hours.
Right. For a Category 5 storm as measured by the Safford Census.
Now, I'm gonna ask Mr. Foss a question. That's our actual time that we're trying to reduce. In terms of this goal, does that also change based on whatever the region tells us to do?
Yeah, it can change.
Then I think you need to do something similar for that one too, just saying that it's, the level of service is the in-county and out-of-county evacuations times established by the Tampa Bay Region Hurricane Evacuation Study, which for 2025 is currently 38 hours for in-county and 38 hours for out-of-county. I mean, something to that effect.
Or, yeah,
Yes, sir.
our 2030 goal is 38 hours for the county or whatever.
You're basically saying that the region, that study basically sets our goal and what we're currently achieving,
Correct.
right? Okay, so I think if it says that you're gonna follow the study and then just says what those numbers are for 2025, you're covered. That way, if they change, you don't have to necessarily go in and change the comp plan, but you're still telling the people what it was as of 2025.
Correct. Okay.
And the same thing for the 38 hours, because it doesn't specify, you know, whether this is a goal by 2050 or 2030 or, so it might be
You're just-
helpful.
Yeah, you're saying that the goal as of 2025 was that number of hours.
Right.
No, this is what they say right now we're at. This is what our goals are.
Right, but they're not setting up a year.
No.
Okay, well, so we really need to clarify. So, Mr. Goldstein, for 2.1.1, the study is not necessarily telling us that by 2030, we're gonna try to reach or reduce our level of service to 38 hours or to in-county and 38 hours out of county. So these two numbers that we have updated were based on what happened during the last hurricane events. So they updated the study this year, and they used whatever.
Okay, well, I read 2.1.2 to be what we're currently at.
And yes,
Okay.
but 2.1.1 is what our goal should be to avoid
But I
any.
just asked Mr. Foster, does that goal change over time based on the study?
It depends on the hurricane events that we experience.
Well, this is a Category 5 storm. We're setting our goal for a category 5?
We always said it for the worst, yes, sir.
Okay, so the question is, does that goal or desired goal change over time based on the most recent Tampa Bay region hurricane evacuation study?
It'll be based on past events. They set our goal on our past events.
Right, but I understand that how they look at our goal, which is they look at how we're doing in past events. Okay, but does the goal change?
The goal can change, yes.
I think what we're trying to do, we're trying to help you get language in here to make sure you're not forced to come and amend the comprehensive plan every time the goal changes. We're trying to get this to automatically.
But still achieve your other goal, which is to say what that goal was as of 2025. So it's published to the world so they know what the goal is. But if you're saying that 38 hours might change to 36 hours next year after a series of hurricanes or whatever.
I'm actually expecting it to go backwards.
Okay, then it may change to 40 hours in the future years based on the most recent TBRPC study. We're just trying to make sure the language mirrors that it gets the goal automatically changes.
Okay.
But you could do that in a way so that you say,
The current goal is.
the goal as of 2025 is 38 hours. But if TBBRPC updates the report and changes the goal to 40, that's the governing goal.
Correct.
So if we put as
And by the way, the reason this is important, and this is not just semantics, is it goes to Commissioner Moody's other point, because you have another policy that's regulatory that requires demonstration of compliance with these goals. So you want to make sure that what they have to demonstrate compliance with is the latest and greatest goal.
Yes, sir.
Am I making sense?
If the new goal is 40, you don't want to have to be.
It wouldn't
would
be
make
fair
it very onerous.
for somebody coming in for a plan amendment if the goal's changed to 40 and you're saying you still got to comply with 38 because that's what we put in the comp plan.
Gotcha. I understand.
We can address that and make sure that it's worded correctly.
Okay.
But to answer your earlier question, Mr. Goldstein, we haven't had a lot of comprehensive plan amending taking place along the coast. One of the last big projects that we looked at was Harbor Town. But that amendment didn't advance. I think this was like in 2021-ish timeframe. It didn't advance to get the actual public hearing. Nevertheless, some of the early analysis that was taking place was on these policies and see what kind of evacuation activity the plan amendment could accommodate. But again, it didn't advance, so
Well,
the analysis never
I'm
finished.
less worried if we use the language that Morgan read to us, or just to contain the statutory reference to the statute that they have to comply with if they're proposing a plan amendment in the coastal high hazard area.
I gotta find it.
I think the statute that Morgan read is consistent with our actual practice.
Yes.
I don't know that the policy is though.
So that we should end that policy, a language, like,
No, well, it probably needs to be rewritten entirely to be consistent with the statute that Morgan read. I don't want to rewrite it here.
Okay.
But
How about if we add as amended?
I mean, I think it could be as simple as saying, future land use amendments that are increasing residential density on the coastal hazard area shall comply with that statute, period.
Could do that. Are we back to 2.1.9?
yeah, I'm just getting clarity on that 2.1. Yeah, okay.
There, you just shorten the length of your comp plan by
Couple of words.
5 lines.
Shorter is always better. Keep it simple. So when you guys get past that, I have a couple sections that I had questions on.
So I have a question, and this.
And to be sure, we'll follow up for the wordsmithing with emergency
go ahead.
management on the other two policies.
So, 2.17, I wasn't familiar with this hurricane preparedness mitigation fees ordinance, but it talks about maintaining shelter capacity and addressing the need for new shelter capacity. So in case you're not aware, typically what happens when we build a new school, our team gets together with emergency management. They have a meeting next week, actually, I believe. Talk about a new K-8 we're building in Wesley Chapel and whether that's going to become a hurricane shelter or not. So if it does, then they decide, well, what's going to get hardened for a hurricane shelter, but we foot that bill traditionally. We get no money.
And we're collecting the fee.
Well, that was my question. And so.
You like how that works?
It says it's going to be for that, but, so either do we tap into that or is that for some other reason? So I think we need to clarify.
It's been going on for a long time.
I think
It
that-
has.
That'll
And
be
it's
one for the,
significant amount of money.
Yes.
that'll be one for the interlocal agreement you're currently negotiating. I see your point.
Yes.
So that fee that is charged, the ordinance is written to the point that the fees can be expended on not only shelter retrofitting, shelter expansion, but also communications to the citizens, so on and so forth. I do not know, off the top of my head, if that money could be utilized by the schools. That's something I have to research and find out.
So I'll give you my answer, the legal answer. I think it can, because F3 of the actual ordinance says it can be used for shelter capacity and safety improvements. It doesn't say that necessarily has to be on county property. However, I think there's a limit to that, because I don't think that the school district can use money that they're otherwise collecting a school impact fee for. In other words, that would basically be double dipping. So I think if they have to pay an increased cost that's above and beyond what they're charging the school impact fee for to sort of harden their school, yes, I think the hurricane mitigation fee could be used for it.
Okay.
But I don't think they can say to the development community, you know, we're gonna charge a school impact fee for this, and we're gonna charge a hurricane mitigation fee for this. I think that would be a problem.
Yes, in other words, the cost of a gym's $5 million and the cost of a
Whatever's
hardened gym is
included in their
5.5.
school impact fee costs, I think they can only charge the school impact fee for. They
Yeah,
can't.
so if the cost of a gym's $5 million and the cost of a hardened gym's $5.5 million, then you can bill the other $500,000 to the,
And that was kind of, yeah, and that's my question. I'm not looking to,
right.
I guess the other thing where we could address it is you factor those costs in the school impact fee. I'm not sure if that's appropriate or not.
And I don't know how much you did. What
Yeah,
I'm
I'd
saying
have
is
to
that,
look.
that you can't be asking him for money if you already funded that cost with the school impact fee.
And I ain't got no money.
Well, I mean, but I want to be clear here. This is not a tremendous amount of money we collect.
Well, and reading the ordinance, I was thinking that probably
And the
wouldn't be.
majority of it may in fact be going to communication equipment
Sure.
and other stuff that this ordinance allows, so, but if you're asking legally, could it be used for an extra cost above and beyond what was assumed in your school impact fee? Probably yes. But whether you can do an interlocal agreement with him that allows you to take some of his money,
Right.
that's a different question. That's a policy, political question that you need to discuss with Mr. Foster, probably offline.
Yeah, prime example that fee is used for our disaster guides that we hand out to the high vulnerability area. That's how we pay for it, is with that mitigation fees, because it's a form of communication.
But you have to remember, the entire county does not pay this fee. Okay, it's paid for
Well,
those.
that's what it looked like.
It's paid mostly for those, I guess, in Hurricane A, B, and C, is that right?
Mhm.
And then I think mobile homes pay it.
Yes.
So
You're not generating a lot.
it's not like this is certainly not generating nearly what the school impact
Right.
fee is generating, or most of our other impact fees.
So do we need to adjust the language in 217 to say may, or to potentially maintain adequate shelter capacity, because it's got other uses? This reads as we're only gonna use it, to me it reads as we're only gonna use it to maintain adequate shelter capacity.
I think the policy is trying to address shelter capacity, and the tool that we have to address it is the ordinance.
I think it could be solved if you just say to help maintain.
Yeah, so just,
It does
I'll
make it
address that.
sound like that ordinance itself is gonna maintain adequate shelter
Right.
capacity, and I don't think that's right.
Help.
Because it sounds like we're still gonna foot that bill. There are counties, by the way, around the state that do help, but there's lots that don't, so just wanted to point that out.
noted.
Little sore spot there, huh?
Well, I mean,
To help.
it does cost, I don't know what a hardened
that's
gym
exactly what it-
extra costs, but it's probably at least $1 million, if not more.
Right.
And again, we work very collaboratively, and, if we think, oh, we'd rather not this be a shelter and maybe something down the road, we,
Yeah.
try to work that out. And so it's a good collaborative effort,
And
but
it's
it
been-
certainly does cost some money.
The good news is A, B, and C is pretty well developed out, so it's not a ton of development going on.
Although with other people moving in, we're still having to add shelter capacity, because even if, there's still a lot of areas in other parts of the county that still have to seek shelter.
Well, and we haven't gotten to it, but there are other policies in the comp plan that occurred to the redevelopment
Right.
of those areas.
Yeah.
And so, in theory, you could have, like, if Sunwest Harbortown ever actually develops, it probably
Right.
is gonna generate the need for more
Oh,
shelter
absolutely, yeah.
capacity.
But it's not like an area of the county like Wesley Chapel or whatever. that's-
It's certainly not
where
gonna
there's-
grow like
or
Trinity,
Hills
Wesley
or-
Chapel
right,
areas. No, you're correct.
Right.
Jamie, did you say you had some?
I mean, in later sections when we get there.
Okay.
I got one more for this section while you're up here on 2-1.
While you're standing there, and my question is not an objection to this, it's just trying to understand it. This is policy 2.2.2. Pasco County shall implement its debris management program following a natural disaster and implement any executive orders. And the question is, what were you trying to get at with the last phrase of and implement any executive orders?
So during Helene, they put an executive order out from the governor's office that debris removal would run 24 hours a day, which we have never, ever done. So the governor has the ability to set orders for our debris removal, and it might also include up to how they're going to reimburse us. They did 100% reimbursement for us for the first 90 days of Helene. But they also put the caveat in that you will run 24 hours a day. And it was, for some counties, fiscally, they couldn't do it. We were very lucky, fortunately, and we have the availability to do it and the manpower to do it through the state. But that's the reason that term is in there.
Well, to play devil's advocate, you're not worried that at some point you may get an executive order that you can't financially comply with?
It's a possibility. I mean, it'd be a stretch, but it is a possibility. We were very fortunate because we were able to work with the state, and we did our 24-hour debris removal for, I think it was 1 week straight. And then we had the ability through the commissioners that they let us start using small mom and pop haulers to assist us. So that helped also.
Should it say and implement any executive orders that the county has adequate funds to comply with?
You can word it like that, absolutely.
Probably should.
Well, you still have to comply with an executive order, whether you have the funds or not.
That's subject to some legal debates. I mean,
Hey, did you go to law school?
Well,
Where'd I get-
and to his point is, if you don't comply to an executive order, you have chances of losing money in reimbursement. That's the hard thing about it. So if we were not able to run 24 hours a day, we would have the possibility of losing reimbursement on debris.
I remember the governor having trooper cut the locks off of a gate at a dump.
In Pinellas.
Yeah,
Yep.
you know, it's because they weren't open 24 hours, and maybe they didn't have the staff, I don't know, but I get it, because we had another hurricane bearing down on us, it was gonna blow all this debris around, so, you know, that's a very unique situation that hopefully won't repeat itself.
I mean, I'm not saying we would openly disobey an executive order, but there could be some circumstance where
We just can't.
it's just impossible. Say the hurricane was such a bad disaster that the governor issues an executive order that 90% of the state can comply with, but Pasco County's so devastated that there's just no way that we could comply with it.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, you know, I guess take away our funding, but we're nothing we can do.
I mean, is there a general assumption that we're gonna apply with executive orders anyway? Do we need to have that on the end of the sentence?
It's also true.
And that's exactly why I asked the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, you could have just stopped it as implement its debris management program following a natural disaster. Is there a reason you need to want that in there, Andy?
It's just because of that one.
We just basically put it in there because this last season, these oddball executive orders would come out from the governor, and we have to comply with them. I mean, we have to make every honest attempt to comply with the order. If we just willfully and wrongfully say, no, we're not gonna do it, you know, that's gonna be a bigger issue that I'll have to deal with. I feel comfortable leaving it like it is, but I also understand, David, your side of the argument also. I just don't want to put something in there that the state's going to say, oh, so you're going to have the possibility of telling us no.
Okay, but if you don't put it in at all,
Yeah,
It's assumed that
it's
you won't
assumed
tell
that
them
you
no.
will. So, I guess the question is, did somebody tell you you had to put this in the
No,
comp
sir.
plan?
No, sir.
Yeah, I think you're better off just leave it out.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, if we can do it, we will do it. If we can't, we won't.
I mean, if you're just trying to say that your local debris management program may be modified by the state, is that what you're basically trying to say?
Pretty much, yes. And in a broad nutshell, yes. I mean, if we can remove it if you want it removed.
What if you just said as may be modified pursuant to state law?
I could put that.
Just say that.
Or you can even say Pasco County shall implement a debris management program following the natural disaster in compliance with state law.
Okay.
And while you're writing that note down, just back to 213 real quick. You've got in here to implement the intelligent transportation sign program and the use of digital billboard messaging to disseminate critical information. Do we need to just add some text that said or other available technology so you've got some flexibility as technology potentially changes to use other communication methods?
Yeah, we can add through other available technology.
Okay.
And through other available technology.
Anything else, Matt?
just a curiosity question. Again,
Curiosity killed the cat.
no, we're not trying to kill any cats here.
Not Mr. Moody. He thrives on it.
Can we go back to 1.1?
If they're already on the road,
13?
what I'm curious about is if they're already on
Gary?
the road.
Just,
Go ahead.
John, before I
He's
forget,
not, I don't know. what-
1.1.13, I'd just like to make sure we go back to that one. I'd like to have a little more discussion on what that involves. I'm sorry, 1.1.16 and 17, about artificial waterways.
Oh, that's you.
1.1.16 building code requirements?
Yeah, the limit to development on artificial waterways.
Yeah, I had a question about that too.
Which number is he on? 1.1.16?
16 and 17, I think, both.
I'm not seeing,
I see building code requirements and land.
No,
development.
yeah, it's a different section.
Yeah.
I did see that though.
It was on that initial list that
It's
you had up.
1.1.11.
Okay.
There you go. Yep.
Okay. All right, thanks. Thank you, John.
What is the question?
Did you have a specific question?
Yeah, I'd just like to know what type of developments you're talking about limiting.
Well,
I
this is.
assume you're talking about on canals. I think.
Yeah, this is an existing policy. I presume canals as well. And I mean, we just went through the docks and seawalls ordinance update with the board this summer. So this is the limit of how we would go about limiting construction of artificial
What's
right-of-way.
the purpose of the policy?
Actually, let me go back a second.
What does that mean?
This
I
says limit
I'm looking at
construction
it from
of
my
artificial.
profession. I want to dig a drainage canal to drain a piece of land. And it's a wet ditch. Is that an artificial waterway that's limited here?
Is this referring?
I'm trying to understand why we feel we need to regulate this.
Well, the other interesting question is, even if it is only applying to like canals, the exception swallows the rule. Because the exception is for water-dependent uses, which is the only reason you'd probably be building a canal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Correct. I may design a canal for the purpose of drainage. That's not a water.
I understand. I suspect when they said artificial waterways, they really meant new canals.
Yeah.
Navigable water?
Because
New navigable artificial
Of-
waterways.
yeah, it says of artificial, not in artificial. So my thought is new canals.
Yeah.
But
But
even
this
if
is
that,
old.
even if the intent was new canals, why would you be building a canal except for a water-dependent use?
Oh, and my question is, why do we need to limit, what is it we're trying to stop?
Oh.
Or why is there a necessity to stop the creation of a new canal? If I'm not impacting a wetland and I'm dredging that canal through an upland,
Mhm.
what harm are we trying to avoid?
So to maybe help answer or at least advance the question, the current definition of artificial waterway in the comprehensive plan is a dredged canal created by man in upland or wetland areas.
Okay.
So apparently it's not a coastal canal.
Okay, and then, so, again, the follow-up question, all right, so now you've defined what you mean by an artificial waterway, and you haven't said it's for boating or navigation, you haven't excluded for drainage purposes. Why do we feel there's a necessity to stop this? I can understand where we don't want to dredge through a wetland to do this, but what's the problem with dredging through an upland to do this? And I don't want to say no harm can be done by dredging through an upland, the Cross Florida Barge Canal being the poster child for that. But assuming I'm not cutting into the Floridan aquifer when I do it. In fact, I'm working on a project right now where I have a canal that was dug by the DOT in the 1950s, and it goes right through the middle of my client's property. And now I want to relocate that canal to the edge of his property, so I'm going to create a new artificial waterway to get the old one out of his way. But this policy would actually stop me from doing that, or possibly stop me from doing that.
Unless you put a canoe in it. It says except for water-dependent uses.
For the day of inspection, just float a canoe in.
And I don't know, if I paddle my canoe to the next state, then is it controlled by the federal government because it's for interstate commerce?
Yeah, it's existing. There's natural resources in the phone.
But I do wonder, like, it is a good question, like, why do we need the policy?
Yeah.
What was the source of the policy? I mean,
The-
I understand
well,
it's in the existing comp plan.
Yeah, the source is, at this point, the source is 2025, but we're checking with natural resources right now.
And I don't want to say that's all bad. Like I said, the Cross Florida Barge Canal is reason why we might want to make sure we look at these things closely. But I don't think we want to outright ban them either, because there may be positive public purposes
Yeah.
for artificial
Well, and if-
waterways.
That's exactly why I brought it up.
And if they're dredging and filling, doesn't 1.1.10 already cover the concern?
Right.
And the barge canal probably came through some wetlands.
Because
too.
1.1.10 says if you're gonna dredge and fill, you gotta coordinate that with DEP, Swift Mud, Army
Well, I
Corps.
think we need to be careful too about what we call dredging, okay? You don't have to go get a dredge and fill permit to dig a wet stormwater pond, which is a form of dredging. What we're really trying to regulate is dredging out wetlands.
Well, what about dredging in the river?
Well, that actually is a dredge and fill regulated activity because the river is a wetland and surface water, but
Does this
Well,
affect that?
The only,
I don't think, well, I think 1.1 covers it because we would clearly have to follow all state and federal laws when it came to seeking the permits to do maintenance dredging, for instance, in the river or the Gulf Harbors canals or Port Richey's canals.
Which means we don't need to further regulate it, it's already covered.
But I'm concerned about just calling it, using the term artificial waterway because I can see where there are.
I think Mr. Moody's point is that even if you complied with DEP, Swift Mud, Army Corps, all county regulations, 1.1.11 would it still might stop you from doing it.
Can you read that definition of artificial waterways again?
sure. Artificial waterway, a dredged canal created by man in upland or wetland areas.
So what do I call the lagoon at Marata?
Well, that's got a concrete bottom to it, but
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it was dredged, right?
it was excavated.
Well, yeah, okay, if it was and if it was below the water
Yeah.
table, then one
Yeah,
could
yeah.
say it was dredged.
There are some inland lakes in the county in which residents have, in the past anyway, created canals off of those lakes. Some of those lakes are south in the southern part of Connected City even.
Right, and
Yeah, so for example, we have connected a couple of lakes, like two lakes that are very close together in a development, being able
Right.
to connect the lakes
so
for recreational use with the
the
canal.
question is, what harm are we trying? I think that should better define the harm we're trying to protect against, because I think there's times when there's the creation of artificial waterways for a legitimate public purpose.
It can help with stormwater mitigation and
Right.
everything else, yeah.
And
Well, okay,
you're inferring that because somebody dug a canal off a lake, that's a bad thing. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know.
No,
One could say they created additional wetland by
you
doing
keep
that.
peppering Terry with questions, but does Natural Resources, did they have an opinion about whether there's a continued need for this policy?
Good morning, Jackie Jordan, Parks Recreation, Natural Resources. So we were just discussing it internally, and we feel that these activities are going to be regulated already, so the policy probably should not be there.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Just ended the conversation.
There we go. Thank you.
I figured you'd get a better straight answer out of them. No offense, Terry.
It's not a.
Or we could let you
I'm not.
cross-examine Terry for the next 30 minutes.
I wasn't necessarily
Thank you.
defending the policy, only, I'm trying to clarify what the intent of the policy was, which was limit construction, okay, so we can control construction through land development code regulation, et cetera, which it seemed like that's what the policy
Well, I think
desired, but-
oftentimes when people draft things like this, they've got something in mind, but maybe that's not what got conveyed in the verbiage. So that's, I think,
Well, it's being struck.
There we go.
there you go. Now we don't have to worry about any
You
ambiguity.
just reduced the size of our comp plan by another 3 lines. Thank you.
Paperwork Reduction Act.
You're the Doge of the comp plan.
It's okay to remove stuff,
You got
too.
any big what?
I think you had a question before Chuck was asking his.
Now
I
can
didn't
get
want to
back
jump
to
in
that
front of you. Didn't want to
because we've jumped back around.
Mine was on section 2.3.
I'm sorry, what was the section?
2.3, so specifically, I'm trying to get back to it myself.
We were back in the evacuation stuff.
So specifically, 2.3.4, 2.3.6, and 2.3.8. So first off, it looks like 2.3.4 and 2.3.8 are just a repeat of the same section. I mean, there's some extra verbiage in 2.3.8, so I'm just trying to see why it was basically repeated. And the second time it was in bold, so maybe that was...
Okay, so you're talking about 2.3.4, which is dealing with infrastructure limitations,
Right,
and 2.3.8.
which is the exact same paragraph written a second time.
Well, my reading 2.3, oh, you're talking about 2.3.7. At least my version.
I'm not on the strikeout one, but
Okay, so my version of 2.3.8 says limitation of transportation improvements. I'm going the one that's posted online.
okay, the PDF I got from Hyatt, it says 2.3.8, Pasco County shall not provide or allow either directly or indirectly infrastructure to be
That's my
provided.
2.3.7, but I don't know what staff.
Okay, yeah, see, it was on 2.3.8 on mine, but it was flipped. But still, it was a second time on that
Okay, so
one
you're
too.
saying 2.3.4
And
and
2.3.7.
2.3.7 are saying the same thing?
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
yeah. On my version, it was 2.3.8, but
Are we looking at policy adapts, or are we looking at policy COA numbers?
Adapts.
adapts.
Okay, so policy adapt 2.3.7 is about limiting expenditures of county funds for new development in coastal high hazard areas.
Mm-hmm.
2.3.8 is what you said.
No, 2.3.4.
2.3.4
It's
is
this-
infrastructure limitation.
This paragraph and this paragraph
Are the
appear to be
same.
the same.
Well, kind of.
I mean, they're a couple words different, but they're pretty much the same.
Yeah.
It's almost the exact
Why
same
is
verbiage.
222 and what is 222? Let's go. I'm gonna check the current comp plan because this is coming from existing language.
222.
It's under chapter 4, right? Protection of coastal high hazard area. So that's 222.
Yeah, even though the titles are different, they do appear to be mostly the same language.
2.4. 2.4.1 is
Limit expenditure.
And I probably should have started with, my bigger question is what the purpose of this policy is for too, because, not purpose, but my issue is that it basically says that we will never develop, or we never support any kind of development whatsoever on the coast. So, if we do have a developer that wants to put condos on the beach, for example, we're not going to provide any sort of infrastructure that supports that development. Whether it's hardened to hurricanes and above floodplain or any of that. It's just saying that we're not going to provide any sort of infrastructure whatsoever to support
Well,
any
there's
further
a
development.
pretty big exception though,
And this one is just limiting the
which is
construction of.
but it's the same
other
policy, 'cause
facilities,
it's
the
not
two biggest
by the
exceptions are
county.
other facilities deemed necessary to serve existing development
Correct.
or overriding public interest as determined by the board.
Yeah,
So it
it's
seems
fine.
to me the board could just, if they think there's some
Yeah, so the overriding public interest could do it, could cover it. Because I was referring to future development.
So the current comprehensive plan has the same policy split between two different objectives. Protection of coastal high hazard area, 2.2. And in that policy, it's just simply called coastal high hazard area infrastructure limitations. And objective COA 2.4, which is about public infrastructure, and in there, it retitles that policy as limit expenditures of county funds for new development in coastal high hazard area. So the old comprehensive plan is talking about two different objectives, and they want to make sure that the policy is consistent between the objectives. In this version of the comprehensive plan, we're consolidating And it does appear that it is repeated in the text here. So I would almost think that we should probably just go with 2.3.7, which is more accurate in title to what the county's been trying to do.
Although somebody added, I don't know whose idea it was, added including new bridges to 2.3.4.
But that's arguably infrastructure. So
And they also made it 2 sentences, so somebody fixed some grammar too. But whatever you all want to do.
So we'll take out 234, so that, and we'll keep 237, which is more descriptive in its title.
Okay.
Yeah, but getting back to my, I guess my underlying question was, do we want to, is that the board's direction that we continue to go that route to, discourage any type of development on the coast unless there's massive overriding public interest? Again, I think if development makes sense, it's hardened to environmental hazards like hurricanes and things like that. It's done properly. It can add a tremendous, because that's one of our greatest resources in the county is our coast. So, it can add tremendous value to the county by the proper type of coastal development. And this basically says, except in extenuating circumstances, we're not going to support it as a county. So that kind of bothers me a bit. And again, if that's the board's direction, then I'm not one to question that, but
I think the nuance is that this is to development of offshore islands, coastal swamps, marshlands, and beaches, of which we have no natural beaches here to begin with, but it's a very limited amount. This isn't the beaches thing. I could see where you might have a...
yeah, that's my biggest issue.
Right, the word
So,
beaches.
the way this policy has operated, because we've had some questions on this policy over the years, there's the phrase, the second part of the policy talks about, where is it? And Pasco County shall prohibit county investments for public infrastructure within the coastal high hazard area, except for public recreation, natural and historic resource restoration or enhancement. And this is the phrase that I wanted to highlight. Other facilities deemed necessary to serve existing development or due to overriding public interest as determined by the Board of County Commissioners. So
Right.
when projects have been brought forward in the coastal high hazard area and they've been assessed and recommendations have been made, whether or not we should, approve them, at times it has fallen under that later section, that last part of the
yeah,
sentence,
the
other
caveats
facilities.
that David mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, I don't think this prohibits, okay, there's two different things going on in this paragraph. If it's privately funded, I don't think they can
That's true.
comply with the first part, which
Correct.
is basically coastal swamps, marshlands, beaches, and offshore islands. The second part is only related to county investment, so a private developer, in theory, could still
Upgrade
provide
one of
that
our roads.
infrastructure.
Yeah,
I think this is basically saying the county should not be spending its tax dollars
right.
in those areas unless there's an overriding public interest or it's serving existing development.
Yeah, I guess that's my,
But the first one says shall
issue
not
with it.
provide nor allow.
Right, so that's what I'm saying, the first part of it is more stringent. That would, I think, apply even to
Correct.
privately funded infrastructure. So that's an absolute prohibition if it's for offshore islands, coastal swamps, marshlands, and beaches.
directly or indirectly.
And that one doesn't have an exception for
Well,
overriding public interest.
Again, I get the offshore islands, coastal swamps, marshlands, because there should be
I'm
development.
trying to be careful and protect my client, but I have a project in my shop right now that would be affected by the prohibition of a bridge to an island. And I'm trying to figure out, and the purpose of Right now, the intended purpose of that bridge is to allow a recreational opportunity, not construction.
Well, let me ask Terry and I guess I realize this is part of the existing comp plan, but is there a reason why, so the second part of the paragraph has this pretty broad exception that allows it money to be, if it's for natural and historic resource restoration or enhancement, public recreation, other facilities deemed necessary to serve existing development, overriding public interest. So there's all these exceptions on the county investment side. But that first clause, which has the prohibition on county or private investment, has no exceptions whatsoever. So the question is,
Shall not allow.
so like, I guess to Mr. Moody's point, if private development wanted to put something in for, public recreation, restoration or enhancement, or some overriding public interest determined by the board, the first clause would appear to prohibit it.
Perfect example I have is like Harbor Town, so if development does happen out there.
In other words, can the policy be modified so that these exceptions, which some of them appear to be good exceptions, also apply to private development?
I think that's important.
No, I think it's just applying.
Because a private development might want to put in something that's helpful for public recreation.
No, 2 sentences.
Natural and
it's
historic
all one
resource
sentence.
restoration or enhancement. Or needed to serve existing development or serve some overriding public interest.
I suppose, I suppose you could split this policy into 2 sentences instead of one big one.
Well, but that doesn't solve the concern that,
Well,
because that's what you did in 2.3.4, you made them into 2 sentences.
well, this is what I was, so the first sentence would continue reading as it says, and then you would add the exceptions at the end for natural and historic resource restoration or enhancement, potentially other facilities deemed necessary to serve existing development, or due to overriding public interest, but not for private
I guess what I'm saying
recreation.
is maybe you just combine this, instead of making, why distinguish between Pasco County investment versus private investment? Just say that, in general, we don't want infrastructure investment in this area unless it meets these exceptions.
I mean, I understand that as well, but
Because if you say it's not, they don't want to allow it, that means nobody can do it.
Right, directly or indirectly. Indirectly sounds like to me, hey, we're gonna finance the infrastructure, and Pasco's saying, nope, we're not gonna allow it, because that's indirect installation of infrastructure.
I think the problem here, we understand the
Why even have a
intended
policy?
purpose, but we have to have a way to be able to seize upon opportunities when they present themselves.
Correct.
Without the document getting in the way.
And I think those exceptions allow you to do that, but only if they apply to everything.
Right,
Right.
I agree with you.
Well,
So
and I
basically-
still have a problem with the beaches part, developable land, which there's not much, but
so just delete nor allow, I'm sorry, because I'm trying to get to your point. Pasco County shall not provide either directly or indirectly infrastructure to be provided. Just delete nor allow.
Well, I don't know that we have to sit here and wordsmith it right now, Terry. Do you understand the underlying concern to try to fix it?
Okay, how about if we start the policy with Pasco County shall prohibit investments for public infrastructure within the coastal high hazard area except blah, 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 blah. So we're not just limiting county investments. We're pretty much including all investment, whether it's county or private.
We don't want to do that.
No, we don't want to do that.
They're talking about the private
We're
side.
saying we can't limit, we shouldn't limit.
What we're saying
Private
is that we
investment.
foresee that there are certain opportunities that private development may seize upon on our coast, and we don't want the document to get in the way. We understand the need to want to limit and control to make sure that we, don't have the complete destruction of our coastline, but occasionally there are golden opportunities that present themselves, and we don't want the document to unnecessarily prohibit it.
Pasco County is not going to spend taxpayer funds on infrastructure in those areas unless it meets the caveats, the overriding public interest, for example. But
We'll
I don't see how
study
you can
it.
control what someone wants to do with their own money. If it's, as long as it meets all of the other land development code and building codes and so forth.
We'll study this one.
Is there something you want to add to this, Cynthia?
Yes, she does.
To this particular policy or in general?
Thank you. Cynthia Spidell, Barbas Kramer, 2002 West Cleveland Street, Tampa. I think that the discussion that you're having, you need to take even a step back and go up to 2.3.1, which actually defines the coastal high hazard area. And this kind of, just to give you a little perspective, this came up recently for a development on the east side of US 19 because of the differing definitions of the coastal high hazard area in the comp plan from the land development code. And there's a reason for that, and I'll get into that real quickly. So if you look at 2.3.1, it talks about the Florida Building Code and using this coastal high hazard area map for that. Well, the coastal high hazard area in your comp plan is defined as the /1 model, which is a category 1, and your land development code matches FEMA, Florida Building Code, which are the velocity zones. So I think that also ties back to your infrastructure issue, because if you're defining the coastal high hazard area as the /1 model, then you're looking at areas on the other side of 19 and not just what FEMA and the Florida Building Code and your land development code consider the coastal high hazard area. So the reason why there's a difference is because of Chapter 163 that talks about the coastal high hazard area for purposes of comp plan amendments. And that actually specifically defines the /1 model. So there is a reason for this disconnect. But I would like to see some language added either in 2.3.1 or in the definitions that basically acknowledges the difference. And the reason why this came up in my project is because we're seeking federal funding, which we don't qualify for if we're in the coastal high hazard area. And your map 2.2 shows us as being in the coastal high hazard area, which for FEMA purposes and Florida Building Code and Land Development Code is not the case. So I was kind of hoping we could add language that just says, for purposes of comprehensive plan amendments or for any coastal high hazard evaluation enumerated in 163, that definition shall apply. But for purposes of land development, and now specifically for these infrastructure, because technically you wouldn't even be able to invest in infrastructure on the other side of 19 on certain areas. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, and thank you for letting me speak, because I've got another meeting and got to run, so thank you.
Thanks.
Hyatt, was map 2.2 included in our materials you sent out? I'm trying to find it.
So map 2.2 is actually in the data and analysis.
That's where I'm at.
You are? Okay, so it is the adapt. Oops. It's adapt 5. Map 5. The existing stormwater surge.
Oh, I didn't get down to the, I was looking in the.
So both adapt 1 and adapt 5.
She makes a good point.
It's up to you and the planning commission. You could reach, I think normally you guys are couldn't be at 1:30 though.
Yeah.
This is a workshop, you guys can set whatever time you want to set.
I want to make sure it's convenient for you.
I'm fine with whatever you all decide. I brought my lunch, I'm good.
Okay.
And I've got to use it for early meeting.
We might.
She makes a good point, David, in that there are now as I think about this, there are other policies, like for instance, I'm sorry, because I got to go back and look at the number. There's a policy that says we won't create any additional roadways unless they're purpose for the hurricane evacuation. Well, that, in the coastal high hazard area, well, yes, based on that slosh model, that includes areas east of 19. Do we really want to limit ourselves from building a roadway east of US 19? Or are we seriously concerned just about those coastal V zones and coastal A zones as defined in the Florida Building Code?
Well,
that's something staff needs to go back and look at.
That's
What is
that's
really
a
our
policy question,
intent?
not a legal
Yeah.
question. And so I think staff needs to answer that. Like, where is it that we want to, have these limitations apply? I can't answer that question.
We could take a look at it. My off the top of my head attempt here is that we're going to run an analysis on a comprehensive plan amendment based on the coastal high hazard area that's illustrated by state statute to us. And then once that proceeds and advances and passes those tests, when it gets to the more detailed aspects of the project, land development code, building code, so on and so forth.
Now, I will say that on that particular concern about roads, I read 2.3.8. I think any road we build east of 19 would meet one of those tests. But it doesn't concern me because we could easily meet any of those things. They're almost all shown on the future functional classification map, or needed to maintain an adequate level of service for evacuation, or needed for local circulation. I could argue any road we build is needed for local circulation.
Okay.
So I'm not worried about the roads, but if you're worried about those limits for some other reason, such as 2.3.4 or 2.3.7, or the density limitation, that's a different conversation.
So I was just saying that if you pass the broad test in the comprehensive plan, you're likely to continue passing and refining the project down the road through the land development code and building code. That's kind of how it's been operating by default because of the two different. So, not to make a presumption on Cynthia's case because I haven't reviewed it or seen it, but I would presume that you'd follow state statute in that case, and if it passes the coastal high hazard definitions of the state, you advance. And that's what meets whatever federal requirement, perhaps. But again, I'm talking in theoretics here.
This was of a great debate when we were working on 1104. For instance, we have a limitation on allowing critical facilities, and there's a definition of that in the code in the coastal high hazard area. And is it really our intent to stop a nursing home or an ALF? Bayonet Point Hospital is an example. It's in the coastal high hazard area. Do we want to stop the expansion of the hospital?
No.
It's east of 19.
Yeah.
Sure. If we had a direct hit from a Cat 1, might it have this much water in the parking lot? Yeah, but do we want to never improve the hospital because of that?
Yeah, you gotta have some discretion.
Right.
Comments up here?
Yeah, there was only one more thing, which is not really about the policy. It was going back to your data analysis. there's a whole section about sea level rise projections, which, obviously a very political subject, but at the very least, I think it's a kind of a fuzzy science because, they've been predicting sea level rise for years and nothing's happened yet. But I'm just wondering how that whole section kind of has that translated in any way to any policies that we see in the proposed comp plan?
Which one are you referring to?
I'm just talking about the 2.2 sea level rise projections and everything that falls underneath that. There's a whole 2 pages worth in the data and analysis. I'm not looking at the actual policy. I'm looking at the data and analysis. So there's a whole study there's maps, and there's a whole study about sea level rise projections and saying that we're going to, NOAA predicts that we're going to have 240 days a year by 2070 that's experiences flooding, coastal flooding due to sea level rise. And
So you're asking if this section has translated into any policies?
Correct.
It has not. However, we have Amanda here with us to give a little bit more insight about this section in the DNA.
So there is a reference to sea level rise in 3.3. But I don't know that it's.
But it was an existing policy.
3.3 is not an existing.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. The
3.3.
But I don't know how it's not really regulatory in any way, but there is a reference to it.
But it didn't come directly from.
3.3 is living shorelines.
Mr. Goldstein, what number are you on?
Living shorelines, 3.3, there's a reference to sea level rise.
But, yeah, there's a reference to it, but there isn't any specific policy that came directly from the analysis.
Like I said, I'm not sure that it's regulating anything that relates to sea level rise. But you asked were there any policies that.
Yeah, that was
that implement sea level rise, and I guess that you could argue that they're at least somewhat implementing it. It's saying that living shorelines can help mitigate sea level rise.
Well, and look at 3.17.
That's mine.
No, this was one.
317.
Oh, right. Do you want to?
Mr. Woody said 3.17.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that one's probably a little more regulatory. I mean, it's not.
Require an evaluation of future sea level rise, yeah. Oh.
No, it's in a list of 3 things, so sea level rise, flood risk, and potential storm surge. I don't think you can disagree with flood risks and potential storm surge.
No, of course not.
May I go ahead and add some clarity to the question that Mr. Pontlitz had?
Sure.
Okay. So, Amanda Hill, Planning Development, Economic Growth. Good morning. Essentially, the county received a grant from Florida Commerce, and that grant required us to conduct a vulnerability assessment, a living shorelines plan, and a resilience and sustainability action plan. The vulnerability assessment was required to be statutorily compliant with the requirements from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, specifically Section 380.093 Florida statutes. And in there are specific requirements in terms of which assets should be considered critical assets, which projection timelines, which NOAA curve should be used. So that data was utilized in the development of the vulnerability assessment and the mapping that you referenced.
So you're saying is part of the grant, and it was required by statute to assess sea level rise?
Correct. We got the grant from Florida Commerce, but then in 2021, I believe, Florida Department of Environmental Protection came out with Section 380.093 of the Florida statutes requiring municipalities to conduct this vulnerability assessment. And that's across the state.
Vulnerability assessment to sea level rise?
Correct. Well, it specifies sea level rise. It also specifies riverine flooding as well. So for communities that are not coastal, they would focus on the rainfall flooding. But it looks at rainfall flooding, tidal flooding, storm surge, sea level rise.
But I would argue that, so even 3.1.7 is talking about a future land development regulation, so it doesn't exist yet. But it says evaluate future sea level rise. If hypothetically it doesn't exist, it's going to be a very short evaluation.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't think this is necessarily saying it's got to mitigate for future sea level rise. It's just saying you got to evaluate it. So
Yeah, and that, I'm fine with that.
If somebody can prove there is no sea level rise, there's your evaluation.
Yeah. That's why I asked it what translated from this section into actual policy, and, it's, because again, it's,
I like how they have to disprove it. Nobody's actually ever proven it.
correct, that's my issue.
Why is
yeah.
the onus that way? Yeah, it's the same question.
That's my issue.
Why don't
Because,
we prove that
it's,
there's not?
Well,
we added a
Remember,
record amount of ice to Antarctica last year,
okay,
so it's like,
remember, this is a future land development code provision. So if, at the time we bring this up, if there's no concrete evidence of sea level rise, then you maybe just rely on whatever studies show there isn't,
yeah.
instead of making the applicant do it. I don't think you may be getting too much into the weeds about a future regulation.
No, again, I'm satisfied with how it's, if there was more, that's why I was trying to see if there was anything I was missing that was a regulation on,
I don't think it's
Based on
3.1.7 is actually regulating. It's just saying that we're gonna address it in this future land development code section.
an evaluation of. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with evaluating. If it's requiring mitigation to future sea level rise, I'd have a bigger problem with it. But an evaluation is fine if there's, depending on what's going on. If it is rising, then you do what you need to do. If not,
That could be a short evaluation or a long evaluation, depending on whether it's actually occurring.
correct.
Or maybe the land's sinking.
Maybe the land, too many people on the
Nobody
peninsula.
thought about it that way, did they?
All right, it's about
While we're
time
in
to
the-
take a break, but you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I got a couple things real quick.
Okay.
While we're in the data and analysis document, I don't know how critical these documents are, or this document in particular is, but if I go to the maps, map adapts 3, the title's Hurricane Evacuation Zones. But it looks like that map shows hurricane evacuation routes. I mean, I don't see zones shown on that map, so I don't know if the title just needs to be changed, or,
Yes, it does. That was,
and if that in fact is hurricane evacuation routes,
it's routes.
does the Ridge Road extension need to be included?
At least the part that's complete. That was one of the main reasons for.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
The Ridge Road
what I was
It's
getting
probably
at.
a layer update that hasn't
Big
tracked through.
I don't know if, again, I don't know how important this is or not, but this is more of a personal question for me. The evacuation zones, A, B, C, D, and E, when I see them defined in this data and analysis section, wherever it is, evacuation zone A, and it ties it to category 1, category 2, are B, C, D, and E, are they tied to certain categories, or is those just?
I will defer the question to Andy Fossa, because this evacuation zone map came directly from them.
At least you're looking at map 4, Jamie?
Well, I'm looking at the text on the bottom of page 7 of the data and analysis, where it gives it looks like it describes out, and it talks about, evacuation zone A, areas likely to be impacted by storm surge from a lower level storm, category 1 and 2, and mobile homes, in the order to evacuate first. But then when you go to the other evacuation zones, I've always just personally wondered, do those correlate? I know it's A, B, C, D, E, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but if I'm in the public and I see a category 3 storm coming, does that mean if I'm in evacuation zone C that I should evacuate?
No, they don't. They don't correlate. Because you can have
There's no correlation.
yeah,
No correlation.
you can have a huge storm surge with a category 2, and you can have a minimal storm surge with category 5.
And Hurricane Helene was a prime example of that. It was 120 miles off the coast, and we still got 8 foot of water. We can get a direct impact. It's all based on the storm size, velocity, forecast, and movement. So I can order, when I order an evacuation, of course, we always do level 1, zone, level A, and then we move in. We model it off NWS, our slosh models, and things like that. And that's how we pull the trigger on which zone we're going to activate.
Okay.
If you had a small, tight storm hit the center of the coast, you could have huge flooding to the south and
Yeah, what confused me is there was just specific
No flooding
reference
to the
in
north.
Zone A to categories 1 and 2, but I'm fine with it. It was just more of a question. I'm going to go back to the policies for a second. Policy 2.3.6, a couple questions here. Um, Two point 3.6. Second to I guess the second to last sentence. Rezonings to MPD Master Plan Development District within coastal high hazard areas are not required. Is that right?
That's
Oh.
right.
Okay. So somewhere there's a thought that if you rezone in a coastal high hazard area, you've got to rezone to MPD?
No, the policies.
Well, what's that saying?
So this policy was updated like maybe 2 years ago, maybe, I think it was a year and a half ago, perhaps, with the parallel flood amendment. And it was trying to correct the previous policy. The previous version of this policy actually mandated, or it seemed to suggest a mandate to MPUD. And then there was an interpretation that was made that said, because the language was not very clear as to whether or not you must do an MPUD.
Okay.
And so what prevents a Euclidean zoning district from actually meeting the requirements of 1104, of building code, of whatever other hurricane preparedness activity we have. And so as part of the parallel flood, we simply clarified and simplified and made it more direct to say that you don't necessarily need to do an MPUD on account of being in the coastal high hazard area. You may trigger other things in the land development code that requires the MPUD, but simply being in the coastal high hazard area does not mandate you to go to MPUD.
Okay.
You may want to clarify that sentence because it is.
I mean, it's not required.
Well, but I
Yeah,
meant like
the
in
sentence just
a
seemed like it
coastal
was out of place.
high hazard, yeah.
Yeah.
Something else, Jamie?
Yeah, 2.3.6 still. When you get down towards, well, it's
3.3.6.
D, E, F, and G.
Which one was it?
2.3.6, where you go to D, E, F, and G. And you have that specific regulatory, if you're this size, you gotta have this amount of open space. I mean, we talked quite a bit about specific regulatory stuff in the comp plan here and making that part of the land development code at the last meeting. Is there a reason we're keeping that here and that's not in the land development code?
These
The open space requirement in those certain tract sizes?
these provisions are applicable to the future land use, coastal lands.
Okay, but
They should say future land use, within the coastal lands future land use category.
I think you're still missing the.
yeah, I
point
get it. My point is it's just buried in here versus, I mean, it almost
It's
seems
a
like it's an open
regulation
space
in the
requirement and a
comp plan.
regulation that should be in the LDC and the open space requirements, not buried in here in the comp plan.
We don't have open space in the land development code. There's no zoning district that would match it right now. We're working on one, but I suspect that's one reason why it's in the flu still.
Well, it doesn't
Right, but
have
it-
to be in the zoning section.
I mean, but you could just say within the coast, within coastal land use category, developments are required to provide open space in accordance with Pasco County Land Development Code, and then you amend the land development code to put all these requirements in it.
Correct.
I guess it ties back to definition of open space and
But there's,
what you're looking for.
Right, but if you say that you're gonna deal with it in the open land development code, you can deal with all that in the land development code.
Same thing we talked about last time.
Should that same thing happen with B regarding mobile home parks and C? And again, looking at C, I think I talked about this a little bit earlier. We've got acute medical facilities that are in manage siting and expansions of acute care medical facilities or other facilities which house non-ambulatory persons within the coastal high hazard area. Our own Bayonet Point Hospital is in the coastal high hazard.
Yeah, but it does say except for expansions or renovations of existing hospitals. But regardless, I don't think C is, I don't really view it as regulatory because it's just saying that you're gonna manage it. That just,
No, but B, it says prohibit.
B is a pretty clear prohibition though.
Yes.
I mean, can you change B to manage?
I would kind of want that, I mean, they're going to be very vulnerable to the hurricanes and mobile homes and all that. Evacuations are a problem. I would just say we should just prohibit them. We've been prohibiting them, so.
You're saying that use, there's no way to mitigate the risk for that use?
I mean, you've heard it from emergency management. Telling people to evacuate is a very difficult thing to do, and managing just depends on.
Whoa, wait a minute, I have a question. So prohibit the siting of new or expansion of existing mobile home parks and mobile homes within the coastal high hazard area. So just let me throw this out. During Helene, we had mobile homes flooded. Can I rebuild my mobile home under this policy?
I don't think that would be new or an expansion though.
Yeah, it's expansion of the park. Oh, it's.
Or it says,
mobile homes,
and
yeah.
specifically.
And
new
mobile homes.
Yeah.
Or I own a piece of
Yeah.
property, and I'm trying to think of this came to me and through my office a couple months ago. Was it over in Signal Cove, where the properties are zoned
Well,
R1MH for mobile homes?
So I guess is your argument that this would stop you from rebuilding and putting a bigger mobile home on your existing site, because that would be an expansion?
Or if I just had a vacant lot in one of these places. Okay, there are mobile home parks today, so somebody demolished a mobile home and then sold the lot to somebody else. Can somebody go put in another mobile home on
Well,
that lot?
I don't think they would consider that to be new if it was already one there.
Well, what if it was an undeveloped lot in that mobile home park, or rather a previously unused lot?
Yeah, you might want to just delete the mobile home.
There are lots of properties in the coastal high hazard area that are zoned R1MH.
I suspect you could delete and mobile homes without affecting the intent.
Right, I don't think we want to put parks, but do we want to really put individual lot owners? And again, is this better placed in the land development code rather than in the comprehensive plan? Since it uses the word prohibit.
And regardless, from a grammar perspective, you should relocate the comma, instead of after of, it should be after existing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get a degree in English?
I did stay at a Holiday Inn last night.
But, I mean, I know we're out of time here, but I agree with Mr. Girardi that I understand it's in the existing comp plan, but just because your land development code is insufficient, should not be an excuse to have this level of detail in your comp plan. I'm sorry, Terry, I'm not going to accept that as an excuse, because you have the ability to.
I'm not arguing that, I'm simply
To amend
saying-
your land development code to put these details in the land development code.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that. I'm simply saying that these specifically are referring to the future land use category called coastal lands, which.
Right, but you still could say, within the coastal land use category, development should.
Yeah.
Be required to provide open space in accordance with land development code, and you actually embed those in the land development code.
For that category.
Can you?
For that category, you can create.
To embed the following criteria? Or is that still regulatory in the comprehensive plan?
And by the way, let me put it the other comment. Even if you were trying to have an open space requirement within this flu, doesn't it belong in the description of the flu category in grows? Like,
Yeah.
why
is it
embed
there?
it in adapts?
Sure.
I mean,
there are policies that further expound on the future land use.
I guess what I'm saying is if you're trying to say that part of coastal land use category that it should have some definitive open space requirement. It's sort of like, you know, like a PD or something, you're saying it should have an open space requirement. Well, shouldn't that be in the description of PD or coastal lands in grows? Like, I'm not even,
I
I'm
don't
gonna be honest
contest
with
that
you.
we can move it.
Yeah,
but
I'm not
I
sure
don't know
that,
if we should.
I'm not sure your planners are even looking at adapts to determine the open space requirements for the coastal lands category.
Well, we have.
I've seen some of your consistency reviews, Terry. I mean, most of the focus is on grows.
To be fair, most of the amendments are also inland, they're not on the coast.
Yeah.
But when we have had coastal activities, we have looked at the coastal element, in addition to the flu. But I understand what your point is, and yes, those policies could be better placed in the coastal lands future land use category, in grows. But again, the question may arise, is this more regulatory language that should be in land development code? And it sounds like Plan Commission is saying yes, it is.
I think it should.
That's been the way we've been going on everything else, right?
Because the problem is you could get a project that's super fantastic, that everybody agrees is fantastic, but it doesn't meet the strict requirements of these open space requirements, and then you can't approve it without amending your comp plan.
Well, I doubt any kind of development, any serious development will use the CL flu to do that. But yes, I understand your point.
Well, we just had a whole discussion about infrastructure with regards
Power
to
plants and, yeah.
Those would not happen in the CL flu. If they were gonna happen, well, power plants would be with the Power Plant Setting Act. But if major development is gonna take place on the coast, it's not happening by CL, it's probably happening by PD. Just because we have so many particulars to deal with. Now, a project may have CL components to it. I think when we did SunWest Park.
Regardless, it should probably be in the LDC and not
Yeah.
regulated in the comp plan.
Right.
Nobody said that we wouldn't impose such a requirement. I think what we're arguing about is the appropriateness of imposing it in this document.
In this document. That was my point.
Yeah.
All right.
Is the horse dead or is it still twitching?
That's all I had.
I'll have others after lunch, but I think
Okay.
Mr. Gray has it.
Oh,
Take a break for lunch.
I just took my break.
He's ready to go for another 6 hours.
What's wrong with the rest of us?
You don't want me to keep going, do you?
To be clear, for the 1:30 PM, are we continuing ADAPT?
I'm going to have some questions on, yes, some of the policies below.
Okay.
That go more to the resilience and sustainability
Okay.
issues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody having fun? I saw all those smiles on your face, though.
I mean, I'd much rather be here than at home relaxing.
I knew that.
We can go back to the holiday.
All right.
Yes.
We'll adjourn till
Yeah, they have a good breakfast.
1:30.